this crisis of courage versus comfort. You know, you have the courage to move forward, but you know what's familiar, and you're always tempted to go back to that. Most of us view this coronavirus as like a comma, and then we're going to go back to business as usual. I heard that you definitely believe that this is a new paradigm. It has shifted. So just talk to us about the challenges that we have to expect with this courage versus comfort.
Well, I think the first thing, thank you for that question, Pastor. Mm-hmm. The first thing that we have to acknowledge is and accept this is the new normal. Mm. A lot of people are believing that as soon as we get a vaccination for this problem, everything will go back. I don't know very much that's going to go back. A lot in society has shifted into a new paradigm that's not going to change. And the church has already made this shift, and a lot of us just don't know it. People are already writing about, even before the pandemic hit, that going forward, churches are going to actually be smaller gatherings with far more people online. And we have to learn how to create community through online with high tech and high touch. And we've got to learn how to create a high touch, even if we're not right there in the room, which is going to require us to change how we do church at all. And it's going to also, because of that, in my view, cause us to reorganize how we manage church as well.
Talk to me briefly also about the challenges that leadership faces, because in the narrative with Moses, of course, the pressure was, we'll just elect new type of leadership that understands how we used to do things. What challenges do you see our leadership, not just from the general conference level, but leaders within our churches as they grapple with that balancing act between trying to create a new paradigm, a new normal for our constituents?
Again, for me, the first issue is accepting that it is really a new normal. Most people are hunkering down. My observation is most people are hunkering down, waiting for us to be able to get back to, quote, normal. But this is normal. Once we go through those 5 phases of death and dying, we can get to the point where we can have a real conversation about what to be retooled. What do the ministers need to be thinking about? The leaders of the local churches. What do the churches themselves need to be thinking about? How does the denominational organization have to shift to embrace this new normal? And it's an acceptance before anything else, and I have not seen that shift to acceptance yet.
We have a pressure throughout North American division with evangelism and church growth, but I don't know if we've acknowledged the paradigm shift that's happening and what that looks like. So can you talk to us a little bit about the tug and pull between evangelism versus discipleship, church membership versus discipleship? You touched on that.
Right. Most churches of all stripes seek to make members. They don't really seek to make disciples. And again, my observation is most people don't know what a disciple is. Most people are pushing to make cultural Seventh-day Adventists. What I mean by that is to embrace the doctrines and the practices of a denomination as the right denomination, as opposed to getting people to fully embrace their relationship with God and Jesus, and to become a disciple maker. And most of us are very uncomfortable with that. We're not even comfortable being member recruiters. So how are we going to be disciple makers? Well, that's something that we all need to be retooled to do, so it becomes our lifestyle and we're actually followers of Jesus Christ and not simply members of a denomination.
Talk to us about vision. I thought that was very, very apropos. A picture of your preferred future. We have not only COVID-19, but I know you're involved in a lot of social justice issues. How can we be more intentional about not only discipleship, but our presence within a community in a time where we can become more relevant than ever under this particular context?
This is a blessing in disguise. Mm-hmm. People are more open to God and just that, open to God, because of the problems. Pressure always drives people to their knees. So right now we have the greatest opportunity to make the most impact in the world. And if we would choose something that's going to make life better for people here and now, they will be much more willing, because this was Jesus' method, they will be just much more willing to follow us to heaven if we can help them to understand how to have a better life here.
Also, we're talking about management of resources. I know that's big as well. How important is that, especially in this context, in this crisis? We're at the borders of the promised land.
I'm going to say this, I say it everywhere I go. And some people misunderstand me, and I don't mean to be offensive. But the church, Seventh-day Adventist Church Manual, is the greatest blessing and the greatest curse to our church. The blessing is it is very organized, and anybody could follow it to organize a church and get a church up and running. The curse is every church seems to think they're supposed to do everything in that manual, which means, and most churches do not have the resources and people or finances to do all of that, 28 ministries or whatever, they don't have it. But we try to pretend we have it, and we fracture our focus. So for me, fewer ministries focused on helping to make life better, because what people are attracted to is changed lives. If we could just be experts at moving people to a better life and not try to do everything that's in that church manual, we would have more impact, because we can be better stewards of both people resources and financial resources.
What about the going back to Egypt thinking that says, if we have fewer ministries, we have less of a democratic presence on our boards to deal with the leadership of the church?
First of all, a board that's got more than 7 people on it is usually dysfunctional. And that's scientific research. That's not me just saying that. But let's even, let's ignore what we know about that. If you have fewer ministries, you can have any number, according to the Seventh-day Adventist Church Manual, you can have as many people on the board as you want. So while the board is constituted by position, there is provision in the church manual for you to put anybody on the board you want to, even if you only had 5 positions in the whole church. You could have a 50-member board if you want it, because it's up to you. That is in there. I'm just suggesting that if you really want to have an impactful ministry, you're going to need to do some things differently, one of which is to have locally paid staff. And to have locally paid staff, which you have to have a life-transforming ministry that the community will invest money in. And you can do that.
I got 3 questions real quick, if we can take these.
Sure.
I don't know how to express the first one. I'm gonna take a stab at it. A new normal of ministry online, or society as a whole, or both? Does that make any sense to you? Can you understand that question?
If the question is, are we going to do either or, my answer would be both.
Both.
I don't believe that gathering together will become totally obsolete, but I do believe that you must intentionally address the online global community, or you're missing a large part of your potential.
What steps can we take to move forward in making other disciples? That's the second question.
Okay, what steps can we take? The first thing is to learn to be one. The second thing is to understand, and there are books on the subject, to understand that disciple making is done in small groups. And I don't mean large small groups. I mean groups of 2, 3, 4 people, where you're living life together and intentionally seeking to have a deeper relationship with Christ with a small group of people that you can journey with until you get to the point where you can also take somebody else on the journey with you. So there are books on the subject.
How can we implement Christ's methods of evangelism to reach our community's need through technology? And how do we fund this initiative?
Okay, two parts of that question. The first part is we must find ways to meet the needs of people. Christ's method alone will win the people. He mingled with people. He had compassion on people. He won the confidence of people. And however you do that, then he said, follow me. The follow me part is easy if you do the first part. So in terms of technology, there are all kinds of I'll just use this as an example. Faith Life has come up with a whole lot of apps and whatnot to help you to create a religious community, so to speak, where you can interact with each other and help each other grow, etc. So the technology piece, the younger people are very familiar with. We're never going to get past the high touch. Never. No matter how great our technology, there has to be one-on-one intimate relationships in order to really do the work of the Lord. And sometimes that will have to be on FaceTime. But it's still, you're having specific touch with people. You're not just going blindly into the internet. The way to fund it is to have a very clear mission, number one, so you don't have mission creep. Most churches have mission creep. We run from program to program, but we don't have a solid laser focus on what it is we're trying to achieve, so that all our resources are moving the mission forward. We're just using a lot of resources to have a lot of activity, which does not mean necessarily progress. So how do you fund it? You have to have a life-transforming mission that people are willing to fund, that you can articulate in a manner. I call that a case statement, that you can articulate so anybody who picks up that document said, I can get with this.
And I know you touched on it because we were in the seminar this week, and that's a written document.
Right, right.
Clearly expresses what your goals and intentions are. What have we, the church, learned from the state's power, in quotations, over religious gatherings in the context of future threats of religious liberties? I guess because you're a religious liberty advocate for our conference, they're asking, do you see our, prohibition to gather as a threat to religious liberty, and what are we learning from this experience?
No, I do not see the edicts and mandates not to gather as a religious liberty issue. It's a health issue. Right. It's a health issue. And those who are defying it in the name of religious liberty are getting people sick. That has already been determined. So this is not a religious liberty issue. We do know that there's coming a time where the government's going to coalesce around a religious idea that will be antithetical to minority religions, and we're going to have to stand up for the Lord despite what other people say. But this is not one of those times. Gathering in a building is not proof that you're free to practice your religion. You can practice, we're practicing it right now. Don't make people sick in the name of God.
Right, and even within scripture, there were very strict rules against those that had leprosy, which was probably the most contagious disease of the time. Right. They were never allowed into the congregation, as it were, of the people. So this is like unto that.